The Afghan sun hammered down on Bagram Airfield, turning the tarmac into waves of shimmering heat. Captain Alexis Raven Novak stood beside her A-10 Warthog, running through pre-flight checks with the methodical precision that had become second nature after 6 years of flying close air support missions. It was August 2011, and she was 3 months into her second deployment to Afghanistan. At 32 years old, Alex was one of only a handful of female A-10 pilots in the Air Force. She was compact and athletic, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes that never stopped scanning, never stopped calculating. She had grown up in rural Montana, the daughter of a crop duster pilot who taught her to fly before she could drive. She understood instinctively what most pilots had to learn through years of experience: that aircraft were partners, not machines, and that good flying was about feel as much as technique. But despite her skills, despite her combat record, despite the fact that she had flown more than 200 close air support missions without incident, there were still people who didn't want her in the cockpit. "Novak!" The shout came from Major Brad Hutchins, the squadron operations officer. He was a thick-shouldered man in his 40s who flew F-16s and made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in combat aviation. "Change of mission. You're being reassigned to routine patrol over the northern sectors. We've got a priority close air support tasking, and I'm giving it to Morrison." Captain Jake Morrison was standing nearby, already in his flight suit. He was a good pilot, competent and reliable, but he had half Alex's combat experience and none of her reputation for precision strikes in danger-close situations. "Sir, I'm already prepped and ready," Alex said, keeping her voice level. "I can take the KS mission." "Morrison has more experience with the type of support the ground team is requesting," Hutchins said, not quite meeting her eyes. "With respect, sir, I have over 200 close air support missions. Captain Morrison has 43. "Morrison has the mission," Hutchins repeated, his voice hardening. "You have routine patrol. Those are your orders, Captain. Any questions?" Alex wanted to argue, wanted to point out that the ground team specifically meant a SEAL team that had requested immediate air support for a raid on a high-value target. She wanted to note that she had worked with SEAL teams before, that they knew her call sign and trusted her precision. But she also knew that arguing with Hutchins would accomplish nothing except getting her grounded. No questions. "Sir," she said quietly, as Morrison walked toward his A-10. He paused beside Alex. "Look, Raven, it's not personal. Hutchins just thinks—" "I know what he thinks," Alex interrupted. "Fly safe, Morrison. Those guys on the ground are counting on you." Morrison nodded uncomfortably and continued to his aircraft. Alex climbed into her own A-10, the familiar cockpit welcoming her like an old friend. The A-10 Warthog wasn't sleek or fast. It was ugly, slow, and built around a massive 30mm cannon that could shred tanks. But it was also the toughest aircraft in the Air Force, capable of absorbing tremendous damage and still bringing its pilot home. Alex loved it with a passion that other pilots reserved for supersonic fighters. She took off 15 minutes later, climbing away from Bagram and heading north toward the routine patrol area. The mountains of Afghanistan spread below her, beautiful and deadly, hiding countless threats in their valleys and passes. Alex had been on patrol for 90 minutes, circling over empty terrain and thinking bitter thoughts about Hutchins and his prejudices, when her radio crackled to life. Any aircraft, this is Dagger 2-3. We are in contact, taking heavy fire, requesting immediate close air support. Grid follows." Alex's training kicked in instantly. She grabbed her kneeboard and copied down the coordinates as the desperate voice continued. "We have 1 critical, 3 wounded, enemy forces approximately 30 meters from our position. We need danger close fire support immediately. Authenticate Tango Whiskey 7. Alex checked her combat identification codes. Dagger 2-3 was a SEAL team, the same SEAL team that Morrison had been assigned to support, and they were in serious trouble. "Dagger 2-3, this is Hog 2-4, Alex transmitted, using her aircraft call sign. "I'm approximately 15 minutes from your position. What's the situation with Hog 2-2? That was Morrison's call sign. There was a pause. Then a different voice came on the radio. This one was calmer, but carried an undercurrent of controlled fury. "Hog 2-4, this is Dagger 2-3 actual. Hog 2-2 took ground fire on his first pass and returned to base with battle damage. He is no longer supporting. We need close air support now, or we're not getting out of here. Alex felt ice flooding through her veins. Morrison had been hit and had to break off. The SEALs were alone, pinned down, with wounded men and the enemy closing in. And she was the closest aircraft. She didn't hesitate. Dagger 2-3 actual, Hog 2-4 is inbound. 15 minutes. Can you hold that long? We'll have to, the SEAL replied. But we're low on ammunition, and the enemy is massing for an assault. Whatever you can do when you get here, do it fast. Alex pushed her throttles forward, coaxing every bit of speed from the A-10. The aircraft wasn't built for speed. Its maximum velocity was barely over 400 miles per hour, but she flew it like she was racing the devil himself. She used the time to study the tactical situation. The coordinates the SEALs had given put them in a narrow valley in the mountains north of Kabul. The terrain was perfect for an ambush. Steep walls, limited escape routes, plenty of cover for attackers. The SEALs had gone in to capture or kill a high-value Taliban commander and had walked into a trap. As she approached the valley, Alex could hear the radio traffic between the SEAL team members. Their voices were professional, but she could hear the strain. They were running out of time. Dagger elements, this is actual. Conserve ammunition. Aimed shots only. Air support is 5 mics out. 5 minutes. Alex checked her fuel. She had enough for about 90 minutes on station if she was careful. Her weapons loadout was standard. 800 rounds of 30mm ammunition for the GAU-8 cannon, 2 Maverick missiles, and a full load of 2.75-inch rockets. She crested a ridgeline and saw the valley spread out below her. Immediately, she spotted the problem. The SEALs were in a compound at the narrow end of the valley, surrounded by rocky terrain. Enemy fighters, at least 30 that she could see, were positioned in the rocks above and around the compound, pouring fire down on the Americans. Dagger 2-3. Actual Hog 2-4 has you visual. I see approximately 30 enemy fighters in the rocks. Confirm you are inside the compound north end of valley. Confirmed, the SEAL replied. We're buttoned up in the main building. Enemy is in the rocks approximately 20 to 50 meters from our position on all sides except directly north. We need you to clear them out so we can move to the extraction point, 20 to 50 meters. That was danger close, so close that any error would kill friendly forces instead of the enemy. This was exactly the kind of precision work that Alex specialized in, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Copy that, Alex said. I'll make my first pass from south to north, targeting the concentrations on the east side of your position. Mark your position with IR strobe. Roger, marking now. Alex dropped her altitude, coming in low and fast. The mountains rose on either side of her, close enough that she could see individual rocks and trees. At this altitude, she was vulnerable to ground fire, but it also gave her the precision she needed. She spotted the infrared strobe flashing from the compound, visible only through her targeting systems. The enemy positions were clear now, fighters clustered in the rocks, firing down at the SEALs. Alex lined up her shot, her thumb hovering over the trigger for her 30mm cannon. This was the moment where everything mattered: airspeed, altitude, angle of attack, wind drift, target movement. She had done this hundreds of times, but never with friendlies this close to the target. She squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 cannon was one of the most devastating weapons ever mounted on an aircraft. It fired depleted uranium rounds at nearly 4,000 rounds per minute, producing a distinctive brrr sound that had become legendary among ground troops. Each round could penetrate armor, and the combined effect of dozens of rounds hitting in a tight pattern was devastating. Alex's first burst lasted 2 seconds. 40 rounds slammed into the rocks where enemy fighters had been firing from. The effect was immediate. The firing from that position stopped completely. Good hits! The SEAL radioed. East side is neutralized. Can you hit the west side? Alex was already banking around for her second pass, keeping low to avoid giving the enemy time to track her. As she came around, she saw that the enemy fighters on the west side had shifted positions, moving to better cover. These weren't untrained fighters. They were adapting, trying to counter her attacks. That made them more dangerous, but it also revealed their positions. Alex adjusted her approach angle, coming in from a different direction to catch the fighters in their new positions. She fired another burst, this time walking her rounds across multiple positions. The 30mm cannon rounds tore through rock and flesh with equal efficiency. But as she pulled up from her pass, she heard the distinctive sound of small arms fire hitting her aircraft. The A-10 could take tremendous punishment, but she was flying low and slow, presenting an easy target. Warning lights flickered on her panel. She had taken hits in the left engine and the hydraulic system. But the A-10 was designed to absorb this kind of damage. She ran through her emergency procedures without panic, confirming that the aircraft was still flyable. Dagger 2-3, west side is suppressed, Alex radioed. What's your status? We've got a window, the SEAL replied. We're moving to the extraction point. But we need you to keep the enemy's heads down for another 5 minutes. Roger that. I'm coming back around. Alex made pass after pass over the valley, using her cannon, her rockets, and finally one of her Maverick missiles to destroy a building where enemy fighters had concentrated. Each pass was a calculated risk. The enemy was shooting at her every time she came in low, and her aircraft was accumulating damage. But the A-10 kept flying, and Alex kept pressing the attack. She could hear the strain in the SEALs' voices easing as the enemy fire slackened. They were moving, carrying their wounded, heading for the extraction point at the north end of the valley where helicopters could pick them up. Then disaster struck. A new voice came on the radio, different from the SEALs. All aircraft, this is Buzzard 1-6. We are the extraction birds, 5 minutes out from the pickup zone. Need confirmation that LZ is secure. Buzzard 1-6, negative on secure LZ, the SEAL transmitted. We still have enemy fighters in the area. Recommend you hold at a distance. Until Hog 2-4 clears the transmission was cut off by the sound of heavy gunfire. Alex's heart sank. The enemy had moved more fighters into position, trying to cut off the SEALs before they could reach extraction. Dagger 2-3. Actual sit rep, Alex called. The response was tense. We're pinned down short of the extraction point. Heavy fire from the north. They've got us in a crossfire. Hog 2-4, we need you to break this up, but be advised we are within 10 meters of enemy positions. Repeat, 10 meters. 10 meters. 30 feet. That was closer than danger close. That was insane. One error, one gust of wind, and Alex would kill the men she was trying to save. Dagger 2-3, confirm you want me to engage at 10 meters separation, Alex said, needing to hear them say it. Affirmative, we're out of options. If you don't break this up, we're all dead anyway. Alex took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define her career, and possibly end it. If she succeeded, she would save the SEAL team. If she failed, she would be responsible for American deaths and would likely face a court-martial. But the SEALs were counting on her. They had called for help, and she was the only help available. Roger that. Stand by for gun run. Mark your exact position. As the SEAL placed markers, Alex studied the tactical picture. She couldn't use her cannon at this range. The spread was too wide. But she had a different option. The A-10 carried 2.75-inch rockets in pods. These rockets were less powerful than the 30mm cannon, but far more precise. If she could ripple fire them in a tight pattern, she might be able to hit the enemy positions without hitting the SEALs. It was risky. It was borderline reckless, but it was the only chance the SEALs had. Alex lined up her final approach, flying lower than she had on any previous pass. At this altitude, every rock and tree stood out in sharp detail. She could see the enemy fighters now, crouched in firing positions, their weapons pointed at the SEALs cowering in a shallow depression just meters away. She armed her rockets, selected a ripple fire pattern, and waited for the perfect moment. Everything came down to this single pass. Alex's hands were rock steady on the stick as she bore down on the target area at 350 knots, barely 200 feet above the rocky terrain. Through her targeting pod, she could see the devastating clarity of the situation. 8 SEALs huddled behind minimal cover in a shallow depression, and at least a dozen enemy fighters positioned in rocks and behind boulders less than 30 feet away. The geometry of the shot was brutal. She needed to place her rockets precisely on the enemy positions without the blast radius touching the friendlies. In training, they called this kind of shot threading the needle. In combat, they called it impossible. But Alex had something most pilots didn't: an almost supernatural ability to visualize trajectories and calculate angles while flying at combat speeds. Her instructors at pilot training had called it spatial awareness. Her father, the old crop duster, had called it feeling the sky. She selected a ripple fire pattern. Rockets would fire in rapid succession, walking across the target area. She would need to time the release perfectly, accounting for her speed, altitude, wind drift, and the slight upward angle the rockets would take after firing. "Dagger 2-3, weapons hot. 30 seconds, Alex transmitted, her voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Copy." "We're as low as we can get," the SEAL replied. The background noise on his radio was deafening, the crack of incoming fire, the shouts of wounded men, the controlled chaos of a team fighting for survival. Alex began her countdown in her head. 20 seconds, 15 seconds. She adjusted her angle minutely, compensating for a crosswind she could feel more than measure. 10 seconds. Her thumb hovered over the trigger. 5 seconds. At the exact moment, when geometry and instinct aligned, Alex squeezed the trigger. The rockets rippled off her wings in rapid succession. Whoosh! 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 6 rockets in 3 seconds, each one separating from the A-10 and streaking toward the ground on trails of white smoke. Alex pulled up hard, feeling the G-forces pressing her into her seat. She craned her neck to watch the impact, her breath caught in her throat. The first rocket hit 2 meters behind the northernmost enemy position, the explosion sending rock and shrapnel in a deadly spray. The second and third rockets hit in perfect sequence, marching across the enemy line like the footsteps of an angry god. The fourth, fifth, and sixth rockets completed the pattern, each one detonating precisely where enemy fighters had been positioned. "Good hits! Good hits!" The SEAL's voice erupted on the radio, no longer controlled but triumphant. "Enemy positions! Neutralized! We're moving!" Alex banked around, coming back for another pass to assess the damage. Through her targeting pod, she could see the SEALs running now, carrying 2 wounded teammates between them, sprinting for the extraction zone while her rockets had stunned the enemy into momentary silence. But the silence didn't last. New enemy. Fighters appeared from positions further up the valley, pouring fire toward the running SEALs. "Dagger 2-3, you have enemy fighters moving in from the east approximately 100 meters, Alex radioed. "We see them," the SEAL panted. 2 minutes to extraction. Can you keep them off us?" Alex checked her weapons status. She had used 6 of her 19 rockets, most of her 30mm ammunition, and 1 Maverick missile. Her left engine was damaged, but still functioning. Her hydraulics were degraded, but operational. She had maybe 40 minutes of fuel remaining. "Roger that. I'm going to put steel between you and them." What happened over the next 90 seconds would later be described by the SEAL team as the most aggressive close air support they had ever witnessed. Alex made 3 consecutive passes at altitudes that made safety officers wince when they later reviewed the footage, using every weapon and trick she had learned in 6 years of combat flying. She fired her remaining rockets in pairs, creating a wall of explosions between the SEALs and the pursuing enemy. She used her 30mm cannon in short, precise bursts, the distinctive brrrty sound echoing off the valley walls. And when enemy fighters tried to flank the SEALs from a different angle, she used her last Maverick missile to destroy a building they were using for cover. The effect was overwhelming. The enemy fighters, who had been confident and aggressive when they had the SEALs trapped, found themselves under attack from an aircraft that seemed to be everywhere at once. Alex flew with a combination of precision and aggression that pushed the A-10 to its absolute limits. "Buzzard 1-6, this is Dagger 2-3 actual. The SEAL radioed. "We are at the extraction point. LZ is hot but manageable. Request immediate pickup. Roger, Dagger. We're inbound. 30 seconds." Alex circled overhead, providing overwatch as the two Blackhawk helicopters roared into the valley at low altitude. The SEALs loaded quickly, professional even in their exhaustion, lifting the wounded aboard first. One of the SEALs turned and looked up at Alex's circling A-10. Through his radio, she heard, "Hog 2-4, this is Dagger 2-3 actual. I don't know who you are, but you just saved 8 American lives. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you." "Just doing my job," Alex replied, her voice tight with emotion. "Get your guys home safe." The Blackhawks lifted off, banking away from the valley with their precious cargo. Alex remained on station for another 10 minutes, making sure no one pursued the extraction birds. Only when she was certain they were clear did she turn toward Bagram. The flight back was tense. Her damaged engine was vibrating badly, and she could feel unusual responses in the flight controls. The A-10 could absorb tremendous damage, but she had pushed it hard today. She ran through emergency procedures, preparing for the possibility that she might have to eject before reaching base. But the tough old Warthog kept flying, and 40 minutes after leaving the valley, Alex lined up for landing at Bagram. She touched down smoothly, despite the damaged hydraulics, and taxied to the flight line. As she shut down the engines, she could see a crowd gathering, maintenance crews, pilots, and officers, all staring at her shot-up aircraft. Alex climbed down from the cockpit on legs that were suddenly shaky. The adrenaline was wearing off, and she was beginning to understand the magnitude of what had just happened. Major Hutchins was there, his face unreadable. Behind him stood several other officers, including the squadron commander, Colonel Dennis Parker. "Captain Novak," Hutchins said formally, "you were assigned to routine patrol. You engaged in unauthorized close air support operations. You exceeded your fuel bingo time. And you employed weapons in danger-close situations without proper clearance. Do you have anything to say?" Alex stood at attention, her flight suit soaked with sweat. "Sir, I responded to a troops-in-contact situation. A SEAL team requested immediate air support, and I was the closest aircraft. I provided that support. You were not assigned to that mission," Hutchins said. "Captain Morrison was the designated support aircraft." "Captain Morrison was damaged and returned to base," Alex replied. "The SEALs were without air support. I couldn't leave them." "You should have reported the situation and requested orders," Hutchins said. "Instead, you took it upon yourself to engage in one of the most dangerous close air support situations possible. You could have killed friendly forces." "But I didn't, sir. I saved them." The tension was broken by a new voice. "Major Hutchins, that's enough." Colonel Parker stepped forward. He was a veteran A-10 pilot himself, with combat experience going back to the First Gulf War. "Captain Novak, I've been listening to the radio traffic from your engagement. I've also been on the phone with the SEAL team commander. He tells me that you provided the most precise and effective close air support he's experienced in 15 years of combat operations. He's recommending you for a medal." Hutchins's face reddened. "Sir, regardless of the outcome, she violated orders." "She saved 8 American lives," Parker interrupted. "She displayed exactly the kind of initiative and skill that we train our pilots to have. Major Hutchins, the reason you pulled Captain Novak off that mission had nothing to do with her qualifications and everything to do with your personal prejudices. Don't think I don't know that." Parker turned back to Alex. "Captain, your aircraft took 17 hits. Your left engine is destroyed. Your hydraulic system is barely functional. You flew through a gauntlet of ground fire 6 times at altitudes that would make most pilots refuse to fly. And you placed ordnance within 10 meters of friendly forces with perfect accuracy. That's either the bravest flying I've ever heard of or the craziest." "Which is it?" Alex met his eyes. "Sir, it's what the mission required. The SEALs needed me to be precise and aggressive, so that's what I was." Parker smiled slightly. "Good answer. You're grounded for 24 hours while we investigate the engagement and review the footage. But between you and me, Captain, you did exactly what an A-10 pilot is supposed to do. You put yourself between the enemy and American troops, and you refused to leave until everyone was safe. Your father would be proud. The investigation took 3 days. They reviewed every second of Alex's engagement, interviewed the SEAL team, and analyzed her weapons employment. The conclusion was unambiguous. Alex had executed one of the most effective close air support missions in recent memory, under conditions that would have challenged the most experienced pilots. But the investigation also revealed something else. Major Hutchins had pulled Alex off the original mission not because of tactical concerns, but because he believed a less important mission was more appropriate for a female pilot. The SEAL team had specifically requested Alex because they had worked with her before and trusted her precision. Hutchins had ignored their request. The result was that Morrison, a less experienced pilot, had been sent on a mission he wasn't ready for. He had taken ground fire on his first pass, and rather than pushing through, had returned to base with minor damage. His decision was within regulations, but it had left the SEALs without support at a critical moment. Morrison was devastated when he learned what had happened. He sought out Alex in the squadron building 3 days after the engagement. "Raven," he said quietly, using her call sign. "I screwed up. I should have stayed on station. I should have pressed the attack like you did." Alex shook her head. "You followed procedures. You took damage and you returned to base. That's what the book says to do. The book doesn't account for SEALs dying on the ground while I fly home because I was scared," Morrison said bitterly. "You weren't scared," Alex said. "You were cautious. There's a difference. But Morrison, here's the thing. Close air support in situations like that requires a certain kind of flying. You have to be willing to put yourself in danger to keep the guys on the ground safe. Some pilots have that instinct. Some don't. Neither is better or worse. They're just different kinds of pilots." "You have it," Morrison said. "Yeah," Alex agreed. "I do. But that doesn't make me better than you. It just makes me better suited for that specific kind of mission." The conversation was interrupted by Colonel Parker's secretary. "Captain Novak, the colonel wants to see you." "Now," Alex reported to Parker's office, uncertain what to expect. She found him with a visitor, a Navy commander with the SEAL trident on his uniform. "Captain Novak, this is Commander James Mitchell," Parker said. "He leads the SEAL team you supported." Mitchell extended his hand, gripping Alex's firmly. "Captain, I wanted to thank you in person. What you did out there was extraordinary. My men are alive because you were willing to risk your life to save theirs." "I'm glad I could help, sir," Alex said. "It was more than help," Mitchell said. "Captain, I've worked with air support for 20 years. I've seen good pilots and bad pilots, brave pilots and cautious pilots. I've never seen anyone fly like you did. The precision, the aggression, the willingness to press the attack even when your aircraft was damaged. That was the finest close air support I've ever witnessed." He handed her a coin, a SEAL Team Challenge coin. "This is from my team. You're honorary family now. And if you ever need anything, you call us." Alex took the coin, feeling the weight of it. "Thank you, Commander. It means a lot. There's one more thing," Parker said. "The Air Force is awarding you the Distinguished Flying Cross for your actions. It's rare for close air support pilots to receive that medal, but your engagement met every criterion. You'll receive it at a ceremony next month." Alex stood there, holding the SEAL coin, processing what she was hearing. A month ago, Major Hutchins had been trying to sideline her. Now she was being honored for one of the most dangerous flying missions of the war. "Sir, what about Major Hutchins?" she asked. Parker's expression hardened. "Major Hutchins is being reassigned. His decision to pull you off the mission for personal rather than tactical reasons violated professional standards. He'll be finishing his career behind a desk." The award ceremony took place at Bagram in September 2011 in front of the entire squadron and several visiting dignitaries. Alex stood at attention as Colonel Parker read the citation for the Distinguished Flying Cross, describing her actions in clinical military language that somehow failed to capture the desperate intensity of that day in the valley. But when Parker pinned the medal on her uniform, she saw something in his eyes, respect that went beyond the formal occasion. She also saw something else. The 8 SEALs from Dagger 2-3 standing at attention in the front row, all of them alive because she had been willing to put her aircraft between them and the enemy. After the ceremony, Commander Mitchell approached with his team. "Captain Novak, my men wanted to say something." The 8 SEALs lined up. and their senior enlisted man, a grizzled chief petty officer named Rodriguez, spoke for them all. "Ma'am, we've worked with a lot of pilots. Most of them are good, some are great. You're different. You didn't just provide support that day, you became the storm that protected us. We want you to know that every time we fly, every mission we do, we ask for you specifically, and we spread the word to other teams. If Raven is flying, you know you're coming home." Alex felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Chief, I was just doing my job." "No, ma'am," Rodriguez said. "You were doing what most people talk about, but few actually do. You were putting service above safety. That's rare, and it's why we trust you with our lives." The story of Alex's mission spread through the military community with remarkable speed. Other SEAL teams began requesting her by name for their operations. Special Forces units wanted her on call for their missions. Even conventional Army units began asking if Raven was available when they planned operations. But the attention also brought problems. Some of the male pilots in the squadron resented the fact that a female pilot was getting so much recognition. There were whispered comments about special treatment and suggestions that the SEAL's praise was exaggerated. Alex heard the whispers but ignored them. She had learned long ago that some people would never accept her, regardless of what she accomplished. What mattered was the trust of the people whose lives depended on her flying. 6 weeks after the medal ceremony, Alex flew her 300th combat mission. It was a routine patrol that turned into another troops-in-contact situation when an Army patrol stumbled into an ambush. Alex provided close air support, using her cannon and remaining weapons to break the ambush and allow the patrol to withdraw with no casualties. The Army patrol commander radioed afterward. "Whoever Hog 24 is, buy that pilot a beer." Perfect support. When Alex landed, she found Colonel Parker waiting with news. "Captain, you're being assigned to the weapons school at Nellis. They want you to develop and teach a course on precision close air support in complex terrain. You'll be training the next generation of A-10 pilots." Alex was stunned. The weapons school was the most prestigious assignment in the Air Force, reserved for the very best pilots. Being selected as an instructor was an honor that most pilots only dreamed of. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Parker said with a smile. "You've proven that you have skills that need to be passed on. There are pilots who need to learn how to do what you do, how to make those split-second decisions, how to place ordnance with that kind of precision, how to be aggressive without being reckless." 3 months later, Alex returned to the United States and reported to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. The weapons school was intimidating, full of the Air Force's top pilots, all of them competitive, all of them brilliant. She was the only female instructor. The first class she taught included 12 pilots, all of them male, most of them skeptical. She could see it in their faces during the first briefing. The doubt, the subtle dismissiveness, the assumption that she had been chosen for political reasons rather than skill. Alex didn't waste time trying to convince them with words. She took them flying. Over the Nevada desert, with mountains rising on all sides, Alex demonstrated the techniques that had kept her alive and saved dozens of American lives in Afghanistan. She showed them how to read terrain at speed, how to calculate angles while pulling G-forces, how to place weapons with precision that seemed impossible. But more importantly, she taught them the mentality. "Close air support isn't about being the best pilot," she explained during a debriefing. "It's about being the most committed pilot. The guys on the ground need to know that you will not leave them, that you will put yourself at risk to keep them safe, that you will press the attack even when it's dangerous. That commitment is more important than fancy flying or perfect technique." One of the students, a cocky captain named Davis, who had been particularly skeptical, raised his hand. "But Captain, doesn't that kind of aggressive flying just get you killed? There's a reason we have safety protocols." Alex fixed him with a steady gaze. "Safety protocols exist to keep pilots alive in routine situations. But close air support isn't routine. When there are Americans on the ground fighting for their lives, they need a pilot who's willing to bend the rules to save them. The question you have to ask yourself is, what kind of pilot do you want to be?" She pulled up footage from her engagement in Afghanistan. The valley, the SEALs pinned down, the enemy positions dangerously close to friendly forces. The students watched in silence as Alex's A-10 made pass after pass, each one closer than the last, placing weapons with precision that seemed impossible. When the footage ended, Davis spoke again, but this time his voice was different. "Ma'am, how did you know you wouldn't hit the friendlies? At those distances, any miscalculation would have killed them," Alex confirmed. "But I didn't miscalculate. Not because I'm special or gifted, but because I've flown thousands of hours learning how to read situations like that. I've practiced, I've studied, I've analyzed every close air support engagement I could find. By the time I made those shots, I had done the same thing mentally 1,000 times. She leaned forward. "That's what I'm teaching you. Not just the techniques, but the preparation. When you're in that situation, there's no time to think. You have to react based on instinct built from practice. So we're going to practice until these maneuvers are instinctive." Over the next 6 months, Alex trained 3 classes of pilots. She worked them harder than any other instructor at the weapons school, taking them into situations that made them uncomfortable and forcing them to make split-second decisions with lives at stake. Some students washed out, unable to handle the pressure. But the ones who made it through became some of the most skilled close air support pilots in the Air Force. They carried Alex's lessons with them to Afghanistan, Iraq, and other combat zones where they would save countless lives using techniques she had taught them. The real vindication came from an unexpected source. Major Brad Hutchins, the officer who had tried to sideline Alex, had been reassigned to a desk job at the Pentagon. But in 2013, he wrote a letter that was circulated throughout the Air Force. "I was wrong about Captain Novak," the letter began. "I allowed personal prejudice to cloud my professional judgment. I believed that women couldn't perform at the highest levels of combat aviation. Captain Novak proved me wrong, not just by doing the job, but by doing it better than most men I've known. Her actions in Afghanistan saved 8 American lives," the letter continued. "But her teaching at the weapons school has potentially saved hundreds more by training pilots to operate effectively in the most dangerous situations. I write this letter not to excuse my behavior, but to acknowledge that my prejudices were both wrong and harmful. The Air Force needs pilots like Captain Novak, regardless of gender. I hope my mistake can serve as a lesson to others who harbor similar biases." The letter was surprisingly honest and self-aware. It didn't erase Hutchins's actions, but it demonstrated a capacity for growth that Alex respected.